Hi, my name is Matt Walsh. I'm the founder and CEO of Splish Naturals. I recently attended Karl Dakin's Motivated Money Bootcamp. As my company begins to launch its crowdfunding campaign for upwards of $3.5 million, I can't say enough about the class, what I learned, and how much I recommend it to any business looking to raise capital.
Have you ever wondered what it takes to successfully raise money? I have worked with hundreds of capital campaigns across dozens of industries, and I'm here to share with you proven methods for raising money in record time and at the lowest cost, while also obtaining capital at the lowest price. My name is Karl Dakin, and welcome to Motivated Money. So hello, this is Karl Dakin with the Motivated Money Podcast. For those of you who are not familiar with this podcast, it's all about raising capital from an entrepreneurial perspective. And in the Motivated Money approach, part of what we try to do is we try to prioritize who we're going to talk to as investor candidates. And so that's going to be part of our talk this morning. So I have Nikki with me here today. Nikki, thanks for being a guest.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So tell me a little bit about who you are, your company, why you exist.
Well, I'm a recovering corporate executive. I've spent 20 years in Silicon Valley, doing a lot of getting them money for different products and services. And like many people during the pandemic, I said, nope, you know what? It's time for me to do my own thing. And so now I start helping young people that are trying to build their new businesses and get them off the ground. It's a fantastic thing to do. And I've met so many amazing people, and it's a great way to do what I do best.
Yeah, I love entrepreneurs. I say that because I love myself, and that's just a way of looking at things. But I've been working for over 40 years in helping businesses raise capital. I'm currently involved in over a dozen businesses as a principal or as a coach or mentor. And in fact, we've got a capital campaign running now out of San Diego for a fitness club. We're getting ready to do a small dollar one for a food truck in Denver, to be followed by a topical salve CBD product, followed by a sports brokeraging company. And somewhere in there, I'm trying to learn everything about hydrocarbon refinement that, I'm busy all the time learning everything, but I've come to develop my own approach to raising capital called Motivated Money. And essentially what we're trying to do is be as elegant and efficient in a capital campaign as possible, because running a capital campaign as an entrepreneur is not your primary business. It's not your mission. It's a requisite to get to fulfilling your mission if you don't have all the resources you need. And along that path, what I realized was that a lot of the startups are all being told wrong things.
Yes, definitely.
The common thing is they teach you choreography. You have to sing and dance. You get on stage. You do a pitch to a bunch of angels, angel investors, wealthy individuals who have discretionary money. I had to explain that to a class this morning. They go, "What's an angel?" I go, "Well, somebody reminded me once that the devil was once an angel," and that put it in perspective. But the thing is that they're pitching to a very limited segment of the capital industry, a limited source of capital. And even though they're commonly talked about and they're in the press all the time, they may not be the people who are most motivated to make an investment. So in the Motivated Money approach, we talk about stakeholders, people who are in your supply chain, either before or after you, people in your community, people who have a common cause or affinity. And we say, let's figure out who those are. Let's quantify, qualify, why they care, why they're motivated, what their self-interest is. And those who have the most, they are our priority. So let's talk about priority. What's priority mean to you?
Yeah, for me, it's really about trying not to have FOMO. A lot of my clients come to me and they have fear, but they're fear of missing out on something. And so they're trying to do all the things all at once. And then they're not doing things well. And so for me, I really try to help people focus on one thing at a time. Take that one step in the right direction towards the things you need to build your business. And capital is absolutely essential. Too many people jump in and then they're in debt before they know it, and they haven't made a long-term plan.
Well, debt is one form of capital, so we're not ruling that one off the chart here just because Nikki said throw it away.
Just not credit cards.
Yeah.
Let's try a better one. Yes.
No credit cards.
Yes.
We're in total agreement on that. In fact, I commonly will recommend that a business not borrow money until they have enough cash flow to meet at least the interest requirements. So they may be doing better than that, principal and interest. Like if you borrow money to buy a house or borrow money to buy a car or vehicle, you have to make payments every month. But people will start businesses with no revenue, not even a product, and they'll borrow money. And unfortunately, there are some, I'll call bad actors out there advising people to do credit card lending. And it can get you in trouble in a hurry. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I go through my roller coaster with credit cards, and every day I pay my credit cards to zero. That's a good day for me. But it's expensive money, and the money has to match the return that you're going to get from what you're doing. So what else do you advise people who are starting businesses regarding capital?
Yeah, I find a lot of entrepreneurs and people are in the business because they're passionate about the product or service that they're delivering. And most of them don't actually have good financial acumen or business acumen. And it's get back to basics. If you're not good at it, make sure you're bringing on experts that can help you and bring in your community. You should have a network. You're not a solopreneur. Even though if we may be the only person in our business, there is more to that. And so I really try to help people make sure that you get those good foundational elements in place before you get visions of grandeur of where you're going.
Well, yeah. Every person who's ever started a business 6 months to a year later said, if I knew now what I've been, I wouldn't have started this business. And unfortunately, that's true. The businesses always look beautiful before you test them with reality. But as they say, like the first shot in every business award plan destroys your strategy. Your first customer pretty much upsets the apple cart. It's good to be excited. It's good to go after a business, but you do have to understand what you don't know can and will kill you. Mm-hmm. And in raising capital, too many entrepreneurs are told or taught that they should just go pitch to anyone who has a checkbook. And in reality, you go, well, that's logical. They have money. I need money. There's got to be a match there. The problem is that the statistics are the matches aren't that high.
Yes.
If you look at angel capital investment, which is what most people talk about, angels only invest in less than 2% of all the deals that they look at. If you're talking about venture capitalists, the numbers are 1 in 2,500, and it gets worse. And one of the points I've been making recently, and a lot of you may have seen me in past podcasts talking about the recession and the current economic times we're in, is that in ordinary times, I might say 1 in 200 people might have an interest in my business, might have an interest in investing. But during a recession, that number can stretch to 2,000. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're thinking about, I need a relationship with this investor.
Yeah.
And maybe I have to take them out to coffee. How many cups of coffee can I buy to get my investment? Well, 200's attainable, 2,000 is not.
Not really. Unless you already work at Starbucks, maybe, or something.
Yeah. Unless you have a coffee shop, and then you're cheating.
Then you're good.
Then you're good. So let's get into this. What kind of a network would you recommend for a startup company?
Yeah, I think it's important to have those basics in place, especially if those aren't your forte. Making sure financially you have, your investment planning, you have your accounting and tax. Those basics are going to be so necessary to make sure that your business is profitable. Most people, when they're, out there selling to entrepreneurs, they're talking about revenue. But revenue is just a small piece of the puzzle. When you have to have a sustainable growth model, you have to think through the expenses, managing it, and making sure that the capital's there for the long term.
Yeah. So as we start talking about raising capital, one of the first things as an objective I give to my clients is I need a cash flow projection. It's got to be at least 12 months. And I say that carefully because I really want a 5-year cash flow projection. But when we're in a chaotic time like we are now, the only thing I'm going to believe is the next 12 months.
Right.
Everything after that is a guess. And I don't believe your guess any more than my guess because I can't see that far into the future with crystal balls that are out there. But what it does is it tells you as a small business, you're saying, well, I'm going to give up to my investor. If I'm going to give up future profits as part of the equity of my company, or I'm going to give away interest as a way of sharing in the profits of my company, I have to know there are going to be profits. And I have to know how much they're going to be. I have seen businesses go, well, I sold my company. I gave 20% of the company for X dollars. And I go, how did you come up with that percentage or that pricing? And they go, well, that's what I was told to do or sounded right. And I go, well, actually, it's supposed to be a percentage of your future profits, which is based off your cash flow projection. Where's your cash flow projection? Oh, I don't have one. And then at that point, I'm thinking about calling the entrepreneur mortuary and preparing for a funeral service because this business is probably not going to succeed.
Yes.
So what have you seen that you consider good recommendations, best tips and practices?
Yeah. So in my corporate job, I spent a lot of time with the sales team. I did pricing strategy. And so I made sure that those go to market were actually landing with customers. And so every single week for, multi-billion-dollar corporations, we're reviewing sales forecasts. When I tell that to entrepreneurs, that first thing is like, I don't have time to do that. You don't have time to track your own revenue and expenses. That's not a good first start. It has to be a priority in your business. Well, I got to go serve clients. I got to go get leads. It doesn't matter. You can have the best leads in the world, but if you're not actually generating revenue from them and you really don't have a plan of making sure I need X amount of clients, I need to sell this much product in this amount of time, and you're staying on track with it so you can adapt your strategy when things aren't going right, then you're going to be dead in the water before the 12 months are even up. And you don't know you're off track if you're not tracking.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned there is, you're talking about the sales forecast going forward. And you're right. I see a lot of businesses. I go, well, what are your sales need to be 1 year from now? And they're going, well, they need to be more.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool, let's do that.
And I'm going, so let's parse that down. Is it little more, greater more,
Right.
something more? Because I said, you really, even if it's an arbitrary number, even if it's something that you don't know is attainable, you're reaching over your head, you want to know how close you got to it because you can't manage what you're not measuring.
Right.
And you're not measuring anything. So we're not managing anything.
Yeah.
This is all a wingnet, reactive kind of thing. And that puts you in a totally bad position because you're responding to other things like the current upcoming economic downturn that I'm preparing for as best I can. I've not yet put myself in a bunker and got out all the nuclear waste stuff. But it's going to happen. We're going to see because of inflation and the Fed raising interest rates to correspond to inflation. I've been telling people there's 3 ways I can stop a car. I can tap the brakes softly and come to a safe stop. I can slam on the brakes and hope the seatbelt keeps me from going through the windshield. Or I could do what the feds are doing and drive my car into an immovable object, which will stop me immediately. But it's called a catastrophic stop.
Yeah.
And I'm very upset and disappointed in the federal government and people making decisions who, in my mind, are not going to be impacted by their decisions.
By what's happening out.
And this is me not, fomenting revolution, but just being extremely unhappy with people in charge.
Yeah.
We're going to see some hard things happen here. So as we're talking about that, and now we're trying to get away from reactive mode. We're trying to prepare for disaster. We know that we're going to see an economic lurch, a roller coaster, earthquake. We saw this when COVID hit, when suddenly you were considered a non-essential business and you had to close your doors. And I told people as soon as it happened, I said, we're in for 10 years of bad news. And I said, actually, go to the FEMA webpage. And it says on the FEMA webpage, if you're a small business and you're closed for 5 consecutive days as a consequence of a disaster, you have a 90% chance of failure in the next 12 months. I go, they closed these for weeks.
Right. Yeah.
And we're still seeing business failures. We're going to continue to see business failures. And with this action by the Fed to change the cost of money, we're just going to accentuate that.
Yeah.
So if you're a business right now and you're just getting started, You think, well, at least I didn't start during COVID.
But don't worry, I started in 23. Yeah, I think it's also making sure that full cash flow statement looks solid, right? And it's not just about looking at that top line, but also the expenses. If there are going to be changes in the market and what's happening, where are you investing and where are you spending, that you're controlling that on your side, what's within your control as well. If you're not hitting those revenue targets, what else can you pull back on? Or where can you invest more if it is actually something that might happen to be recession proof? There's plenty of things that can be that in this world too. So it's making sure you have that balance and you're ready to pivot as things change.
Yeah, I would be out doing a relationship test, right? You know, I would talk to every single key service provider, every single vendor supplier, everyone who's reselling my stuff. And I would be testing their capability of surviving because to some degree, I'm dependent upon the fact that I don't sell to myself, by myself, for myself.
Right. And if anything falls apart in that, you're going to struggle, just like during COVID, where we had these really tight supply chains and we were all excited about just in time. But just in time doesn't work when we have no ability to keep inventory locally. So
right, and we're going to see more of that. We're already seeing actually from the capital industry standpoint, we kind of entered into this early 2022, and we're now at a point where banks are not making loans because they don't know what the next 6 months is going to bring. And if I'm dependent upon financing from that bank, that's not going to work.
Right.
And so my choices in raising capital today are going to become much more limited, much more restrictive. I'm seeing the concept of crowdfunding is gaining more and more popularity as we look to our customers as a potential source of funding and less to regular financial institutions and people who have an option. They have the discretion not to make an investment right now. They can ride out the storm, and you can't.
So you have to have a plan for the long term. Yeah, it's been great because I've been on a couple of different boards for nonprofit organizations. And so having that model in my back pocket where you think more about, in order to serve your customers, you have to go get donors. You have to fundraise all the time. The revenue doesn't just automatically come in because you have a product to sell. The more people you have to serve in your nonprofit, the less money you have nothing but expenses. And so thinking about that model in a for-profit way is also important because then you start opening up new funding sources like crowdfunding and, community sourcing and things like that.
Yeah. And a common topic of the Motivated Money podcast are relationships. Most everybody's in agreement that relationships can or should be your greatest asset. The more people you know, the more people you work with, the more they understand how your success translates to their success, whether it's direct or indirect, monetary or non-monetary, then they have a reason to support you, good times or bad. And you want to start reinforcing those relationships. It's like putting the shutters up in your house in Southern Florida during the middle of the summer. The storm is coming and you need to be preparing for this. And so maybe you do need to slow down a little bit. Maybe you need to test twice before, was it measure twice, cut once?
Yeah.
It's kind of a thing, but I see this as something that I find it weird for millennials who seem to work in groups, but they don't seem to do business in groups. It seems kind of weird.
Counterintuitive. Well, a lot of them were raised by a generation that still has a bit of a fixed and scarcity mindset where we were taught to be super competitive in school and work and business. And so although they work together because they want that community feeling, they still have a mindset that they're afraid to share that financial success because it means they're not getting something. And it's good to start to see the next generation of Gen Z as they're coming out is because they're starting to pivot in a little bit more abundance mindset and really starting to say, you know what, if I help you, you'll help me. We may not have the same skills, but that's fantastic because then when I can't do something, you can help me and vice versa. So the more we can try to do that with our businesses and make sure you are surrounded with a community of people that are going to help you no matter what the challenge, then we're going to weather this storm.
Yeah. And I think that that's the point that we want to leave today with is that take a homework assignment. I like to do this on this podcast. I go, we can't cover enough turf in the short time we have, but as a homework assignment, go look at everybody that you're dependent upon for your business to succeed and make a list of them And then ask yourself, what can I do to shore up that relationship? Where can I put shutters on that window? What can I do to make it stronger? What can I do to help them and make them aware that my success contributes to their success and vice versa? And by doing that, you are reinforcing your relationship, which will be essential to you as we go through this economic storm. Anything else, Nikki, that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, humanity is community. Together we succeed. And, if we don't reach out and start to share vulnerably where you're succeeding and where you're struggling, no one knows that you need the help. And so I think it's important, like you said, to start shoring up those different relationships you have in personal life and in business. You never know where the help is going to come and where you can also provide help in return.
Yeah, and it's a good point. We're not going to get to it today because we're running out of time. We had talked a little bit beforehand about personal life versus business life. And it's a very important thing that your personal life is as stable as your business life, if not more so.
Mm-hmm.
Because when times get tough, you don't want to bring all those problems home with you. Entrepreneurs are notorious for divorces, and that should not be one of the things that you put in your portfolio and so forth. Anyway, thank you, Nikki, for being my guest today. Thank you for all listening to this episode of the Motivated Money Podcast. We look forward to talking to you about raising capital as an entrepreneur of the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening in to Motivated Money. If you like this or any other episodes, make sure to leave a rating and review of the show. We love to hear your feedback and want to make this the best possible show for you. Also, if you like this episode, make sure you share it with someone you know who is seeking to raise capital. They will appreciate learning what you now know about raising funding. I'll see you on the next episode of Motivated Money.